Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Spill the Beans. I'm in downtown Charleston, South Carolina, sitting down with a couple of buddies and mastermind members in Legacy Family, Tim Shaw and Seth Teagle. These guys are full-time firefighters and have picked up over 600 apartments on a part-time basis over the past couple of years. So there's gonna be some big takeaways. I'm gonna dive deep into what they got going on in their full-time role there, and then how they were able to scale up and pick up 600 apartments over the course of the past 2 years. Check it out. What's up, guys? Cheers. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome to Charleston, South Carolina.
Down. Yeah,
thank you.
Good.
So, I appreciate you guys coming in from Columbus and a couple Buckeyes.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit. All right. So, everybody's got a little bit of familiarity with you, but give me a little bit of background. You guys are both firefighters up in Columbus area, and you guys are GPs in about 600 doors now. Mm-hmm. So you got some good stuff going on, obviously, and you're full-time firefighters. So there's a lot that I want to hit on. I want to talk about how did you grow your portfolio that big in a part-time manner, and also, how can we inspire other full-time professionals, right? Whether that's firemen, policemen. My dad's a retired police officer, right? Mm-hmm. EMS, or whoever it is, or anybody in a full-time job to start building this business. So I want to hit on all that stuff, but give me high-level background on each of you guys real quick of kind of where you're coming from and kind of what you got going on right now.
Okay, I guess I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got into the fire service at 18, so 22 years now for me, and it was all I'd ever done, all I'd ever known. And probably 7 years ago, I realized that I was just getting killed by the constant schedule, 24 hours on, 48 hours off, and I was working overtime, or I was going to another job or something else, and realized that in order for me to really benefit my family, I wanted to be home more. That was always kind of my why. It was how do I do better, produce more, kind of what my hourly rate would be worth, and it forced me to look into real estate. I ran into a guy that I went to college with, who, when I met him, I went to the fire service. He went into real estate to be a realtor. When I reconnected with him, though, he was a massive investor down in the Southeast, down in Florida. So that was super encouraging. And then I took a couple years of learning, studying underneath a guy that was doing house flipping and kind of learning from him. And then I went straight into large multifamily. And then we've been going ever since and growing.
Love it, man. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the fire. I mean, obviously, I got good buddy Jack Patrick and a couple other good buddies who are former firefighters and now are full-time real estate investors. Is that scheduling that you guys do, 48 hours off, 24 on, 48 off, 24 on? Is that an antiquated model? Is there a better way to do it?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, people have studied studies, I think, and they've looked at it. I know some busier places, they do 8 hours. So police usually do 7:30 to, I don't even know what it would be. It's 7:30 to 3, and then 11 to 7, and then a 7 to something in the morning. They have it kind of broken up
11
like
to 7
that.
a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, and then my brother, he's a captain in Bismarck, North Dakota. They do 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, and then they have 4 days off. So there's different scheduling models. I have found 24, 48 has always been my favorite, but it's also the one that I've worked the most under in my whole career. So I've always liked it. I think a lot of guys, they enjoy it, but if you're at a busy house, it gets old. It can get old quickly when you're up all night long, every night.
If you don't get to rest and work out and get get some sleep or whatever. And it seems like, a lot of firemen have a secondary gig that they're working on, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You say 50% of them, all of them, 30% of them, 90% of them. How many of them would you guys say actually are out there doing something else, have some sort of secondary business?
I would say at least 2/3.
Yeah.
At least 2/3 of the guys.
Is real estate usually that thing?
Well, no. I feel like it's more craftsmen, more trades, people who do plumbing or electrical, landscaping, lawn care. Some people, and a fair amount of people, will teach or mentor. So they'll precept new paramedics and new firefighters in different schools. Guys will work at the fire academy, and then a fair amount of people work for medical services too, either being an EMS transport person, or for me, I worked about 5 years. I worked on a helicopter as a flight crew member on my days off, but it's a lot because then you're stacking 24-hour days on top of
another full-time job, right?
Yeah. And some in Central Ohio, part-time firefighting, Like we're all firefighter and paramedics up there. So a lot of guys they'll go leave their job and go work at another firehouse. And they'll just be doing 12-hour shifts. So they'll do a 24, they'll get off in the morning, they go to another one, do 12. Or sometimes they'll do another 24, then they'll have one day off. So that, like I said, that's the wheel that I was on for many, many years.
Yeah.
Until I got into real estate.
Tim, how about you?
About the same amount of time in service. I've been doing this for a little over 20 years. And my wife and I fixed up our first house that we lived in. We sold it and made a tidy little profit on it. And we found out that we didn't have to pay any taxes on it. There was no tax liability.
Yeah.
And that was kind of our segue into, wow, we could keep doing this. And so then we just started flipping houses, one after the other. And
your own primary residence? Or?
We did. That way we kept the capital gains exemption. And
so if you live in a house for at least 2 years as your primary residence, 2 of the last 5 years is technically the thing, then you can up to $250,000 as an individual or $500,000 as a married couple filing jointly. You pay 0 taxes on that gain of that sale, right? So
right, that's correct.
I got a buddy who was up in, I don't even know, New Jersey, and he'd flip houses. And whenever he found one that he really liked in a good area, that he liked the school district and all that stuff, and he liked the house, he would essentially move his family every 2 to 3 years and move into that new house, sell his other house, take all the gains from it, and you do that 5 times, and all of a sudden you got your got $1 million house paid for, kind of a thing,
With an aversion to moving,
right,
which is what we found that
my wife's
that tires over time.
Yeah, for sure.
And so my wife and I worked it out, and she was really a little leery of the idea at first, but so we made a couple of plans to kind of make it go easier. One that we would always use movers. Moving service to make our moves easy. Yeah. And we're doing it to make money as well. And then that we would put our kids in private schools. That way we weren't uprooting them from one school system to another, even though we were in a fairly small geographic area in the city. So
and then you started flipping houses. How many, I don't know, how many deals can you do when you have a full-time job? Like how many were you doing on an annual basis?
Probably about once a year.
Okay.
So sometimes we would do flips that we didn't live in as well, but we tried to live in them for 2 years. That way we could get the capital gains exemption.
Yeah.
But you're only as good as your last deal.
Yeah.
And at some point we decided to start investing in apartments because we wanted something that would throw off income, whether we were flipping or not.
Were you guys doing did you ever have smaller rentals?
We did. We had a few. We've had a few single family rentals. We had one big house that we weren't going to be. We wouldn't satisfy our capital gains exemption 24-month period yet, so we rented it for 1.5 years before we moved into it. That was so we delayed starting renovations on it. We delayed moving into it until so we bought it. It covered itself as far as debt service and taxes and insurance by having it rented. We made a little money on it and then moved into it. So, which was
it's you buy assets, you let other people pay for them, and your wealth builds. It's a pretty simple concept, you know what I mean? It's wild when you think about it, like how more people just don't do it. There are some nuances though. So tell me about how you guys started scaling up. Like how did you guys start raising the money for deals? How did you get into 600 doors over the course of a few years?
I guess while he was doing that, I had kind of studied, realized I wanted to get in real estate, worked for free for a guy for about a year doing project management for his flips and then doing property management for his rentals, and then realized quickly that at the time I wanted to sustain my fire service career and get bigger, I had to go something that was more efficient, and that got me into multifamily. So I went to one other investor and I said, hey, look, I want to buy apartment buildings, and I'm like, let's put our money together and see what we can do. And so we bought the biggest thing that I could find, which made sense, and it was 50 units. And before I met Tim, I worked on that deal, was there every day for a year when I wasn't at the firehouse. I eventually realized I had to, in order to keep up with the amount of people moving out and the occupancy that we were changing out, because we were changing the tenant class out, I had to hire more people. So I ended up basically running a crew of contractors down there. But when we finally refinanced that, after 14, 15 months, we pulled out $1 million in equity, and I was like, this is it. This is
you had
great.
$1 million cash out refinance?
Yeah.
And then beyond that, there was still equity in the property.
Yeah.
You're saying?
Yeah. And it was just me and one other guy we each owned 50% of it. And I learned a lot in that because I went in, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, right? And actually, Jack Petrick was a great kind of mentor from a distance for me that I would call being another fireman. And I realized quickly I got into that deal, I didn't have enough capital for the renovations. And so I ended up having to go raise private money after I'd already closed on the deal, and people just did basically notes to me on my credibility and my trust they had with me. But yeah, that's how we paid everybody back that we owed money to, pulled all of our own money, had enough money to go buy another one.
Do you think it's important for people to go and or do you think it's necessary and or important for people to go and work on the property themselves?
At this point, no.
Did that help you?
I think it did in my very first deal.
Did it open your eyes of shit, I shouldn't be doing this? Or are you glad you did it because you made more money? Tell me what,
So in the very beginning, I don't it's very interesting because most firemen, like he was saying, are in the trades business. I was like, I got to be the guy to hang the drywall, to change the outlets out, to do the painting, to do all this stuff. It was just my mindset from the way that I had been raised that I cut my own grass. I fixed it. If it broke, I fixed it. So I didn't even think about, having other people do the work, right? I had all the tools, I knew how to do it. And it wasn't until I was on my third unit and it just kept stacking up. Somebody else moved out, somebody else moved out, somebody else moved out. And I'm like, this is not gonna work. I've got 10 vacant units all of a sudden that need full turns, and not just turns, but fully renovated, and so I had to kind of let go, but I also had spoke with another investor who
isn't that fascinating? Nobody breaks until it's so painful that you have to move, right?
Yeah. Well, and he explained to me was if you go hang drywall, all you did that day for 8 hours is hang drywall. Or you could pay somebody to hang that drywall and do these other things, and you go out and talk to 2-3 people that end up lending you money to do your next deal. That was way more valuable time for you. The ROI was much better, and it blew my mind. That was and then I had to just start letting go. It was the work was too much for one person, and like I said, going into that deal, I had no idea.
Yeah, I think especially when you come from dude, I was raised in a blue collar household, right? My dad was a cop, and so we went and did the work if you want it done, right? You want something done right, you got to go do it yourself, kind of a thing, right? And dude, that whole trading your time for money and realizing that if I do that, that's how much money I'm making. However much money somebody that hangs drywall makes, that's how much money I'm making, right?
Yep.
Versus there's higher and better uses of your time. And figuring out, it's hard early on though, because you don't know if you go and raise $500,000, what does that mean for you, right? How do you quantify that? Well, I can go do a $2.5 million deal. On that $2.5 million acquisition, it's probably worth $3.5 million when it's all said and done. If I can keep 50% of that deal, then to me it's worth $750,000 or $500,000, whatever it is, right? So now you're okay, well I guess now that does make sense. I can quantify this because I've done one deal and I can kind of conceptualize what that time is worth if I go and spend it doing this activity instead of that one,
Yeah.
It's but dude, it's hard, man. It's hard to go from you doing the work and controlling all the work, and then all of a sudden letting somebody else do it, probably not as good as you do it, right?
Yeah. Yep. And that's what we've even realized as we've scaled is there's just more stuff we got to let go.
So how do you get past that?
Desperation.
It's so painful that you have to.
Right? I think that,
that you realize somebody else doing it at 80% is better than me doing 100%.
And I think the lines intersect eventually, and you're just out of time. And I wish that I could say that, me personally, or even us, as in a partnership, that we were more proactive in scaling. But really, we had to come to some pain points for that to actually happen. And it's okay, here I am, and I need to triage this. What I'm going to do today, because I don't have time to do everything. And that's still something that we're working on though. As we want to continue to grow our business, systems and processes are something that it sounds so intangible when you're first getting into it and learning about it, but we have quickly realized how important it is.
Yeah. I just remember early on, I was I see big businesses. I don't understand how they create big businesses. How do you hire people? How do you put systems? What does systems and processes even mean? So what kind of systems and processes have you guys put in place as you've grown your business over the past several years?
I mean, I think a lot of it is even just that's the nice thing with the both of us is that he's a constant reminder to me, and I'm a constant reminder to him that hey, that's not your highest and best use of time. But for us, I mean, even just documenting how do we find a deal? Once we find the deal, what processes does it go through for us to qualify the deal? Then who does it go to after that? And documenting those things. Initially, again, we were we just kind of bootstrapped it and did it. And then all of a sudden, as we started getting bigger and bigger, we're like, hey, we need to, we'd get more deals coming to us from brokers or have good relationships with. It's like, we can't evaluate all these that fast. So we can't.
Well, I think I think to your point, real quick, before you go past that, is like, it's documenting the process, right? You're already going through the process. Now it's becoming aware of what are you doing? What's the next best step that I need to take after this happens? I can go that way or I can go this way. All right, well, this is a better decision. So it's just documenting the path, the process map, right? That you follow in order to, from your experience and just kind of becoming aware of that and then documenting it, writing it down, creating a checklist, like who do you call and when do you call them, and you just document the process. You can record yourself going and doing that activity, and now all of a sudden, you got a training manual, right? For the next person that you hire for that role. And so it can be that simple. It can be as simple as a checklist of the due diligence items that you got to do before you ever buy a deal, right? It can be as simple as a step-by-step, if this, then that, if that, then this, right? And just following the map that you go through and just documenting the process. And you become a better entrepreneur, I think, because you become more aware of it, right? And it forces you to really think through, is this the next best step, right? This is how I've always done it, but just because I've always done it that way doesn't mean it's always the best way to do it, So yeah, I think that's a powerful step. So what does your guys' team look like today?
You answer that, or you want me to?
It doesn't matter. We have a property management company, so we have a property manager that manages.
You guys in-house manage all 600 doors?
Yeah.
And they're all in the Columbus area, right?
That's right, in the Columbus,
All right, so how many employees do you have for those 600 doors?
We're at about to 15 now. So
Yes.
we've got what, 4 people in the office that do mainly leasing, marketing, accounting, the kind of like a tenant coordinator, and then we have maintenance guys, and then we have guys that do like unit turns and construction and whatnot. We've had to bring it in house because we
maintenance, property management, and leasing are the 3 main categories, right? And you have 15 employees for 600 units, so about 2.5 employees for every 100 doors.
That sounds right. Yeah.
That's pretty good. We're at, I think, about 3 employees for every 100 doors. But there's some layers upon layers of stuff too, and we have a lot of stuff that's like, we're in 12 different states, so it's like we're kind of spread out, so it's hard to put some of those efficiencies in place. But that's a testament to having all your units in one market. There's additional efficiencies to that,
Yeah.
I think we're probably close to that 3 because we have a bookkeeper and an accountant that are vendor as well.
Yeah.
So you can kind of add 2 more people.
Yeah, there's like
into
other
our
people
team.
on the team for sure that aren't directly employed by us, but
Yeah.
That's great, man. And then, so what size deals are you guys typically buying?
So I think that we're looking for something that's 50 or more doors in a community that we're already in, or 100 doors or more in areas that other areas. So we want it to be large enough where we could put some kind of scalable management, or large enough that we could get a good management if we had a third party it, if it was a place that we couldn't put management in place.
Do several of your maintenance personnel and staff or anything live on site at your properties?
no.
We don't have,
nobody does.
No one
No,
does.
we don't. I mean, I've never been a big believer in that, like not mixing those lines. I mean, I know some people do it, but I just have always had a problem where, the guy he starts falling off and not doing quality work, but he lives there and he has a lease or what, it just gets really kind of weird. Or people like a bad thing to do is just give somebody free rent in return for work, right? Yes.
If you're going to hire somebody who lives on site, you pay them a salary and you charge them rent and you sign a lease the same way, because I've had that happen a whole bunch of times too, or early on, several times it happened, where it's like, oh, well, I still work for them. And then the judge is like, well, show me a lease. Did he do any work for you? Well, I don't know. If he picked up litter, is that working? Well, maybe it is working in the judge's eye, you know what I mean? So it's like, there's a gray area. You need to remove as many gray areas as possible and just make it very black and white of, hey, you sign a lease, you work for us. If we fire you, you no longer have income, but you're still responsible for paying that lease on a monthly basis. The other thing is, when you show a rent roll to the bank, or you show a rent roll to a buyer, they want to see who's paying rent and how much they're all paying. So it's better to have them paying rent and show it as additional income and there's benefits to that on the refinance and on the sale.
Yeah. I think if you did it that way and you kept it black and white, then it would probably be, it could be probably more tenable. Or
they're still buddies and buddies with the other people and so they're less likely to knock on the door, post a notice, right? So I totally get, man. It doesn't make sense at all, or in many situations, but sometimes you kind of want them there too, in case shit hits a fan, or they can kind of have their eyeballs out there on, hey, so and so's having a bunch of parties all the time, being a problem tenant. So yeah, man, there's good and bad to all that.
And I would imagine too, even for like you guys have so we having stuff in other states that's farther away, that might be something that is, you might see it more, I guess. I don't know. Just it's like a double-edged sword for us, right? Is that most of our stuff that we own and control is local. It's within an hour of my house, right, or his house. So it's like we are not there all the time, but we are. We go up to the office and see what's going on, and it's. But when you're that removed from it, you don't even have to think about it. And then having somebody there on the site to kind of be your eyes and ears as an owner, I think could definitely be something to.
Well, I think there's benefits to having it in your own backyard. Just had a podcast on Spill the Beans where I was talking to a couple of brothers and told them there's a book written in the 80s called Management by Walking Around. And it's just, and that's the concept. You show up and you start asking questions and you look around, you point at stuff, right? And you have the staff come and follow you around so they know that you're paying attention, right? And you're asking relevant questions so that way they know that you're paying attention to your asset, they should be paying attention to your asset, they're your asset as well, and be prepared, for surprise visits and to walk around and answer questions on stuff. And I think that's a really powerful concept. But at the same time, again, there's ebbs and flows or benefits and disadvantages to everything. By buying properties out of state, it's also forced me to think about it as a business, because there is a constraint on me where I can't physically go to that property, and my team can't physically go to that property. So how do you put systems and processes, procedures, and people in place to then do that for you? You know what I mean? So it forces you to really think more like a business owner rather than an owner-operator. But at the same time, you got to make sure that you got systems and process and people who are going to go and manage by walking around the same way that you would, and asking those difficult questions. And if they're not doing that, then there's multiple layers of inefficiencies instead of efficiencies, So, I think there's benefits to both, man.
And when you guys pick up properties in other markets like that, do you usually inherit the staff there, or how do you guys do that?
Very rarely have we found good luck in inheriting staff.
Okay.
Almost always, we try to leave them on. They all talk a big game during the acquisition process, and then they fall off in performance. Because, dude, we come in and we say, hey, here, most times we're buying distressed properties, right? So physically distressed or managerially distressed. And typically the case isn't necessarily the owner's problem, it's also the staff's problem. Or they're jaded, or they're trained inappropriately, or not doing the right activities, right? So when we come in and we have key performance indicators and metrics that they need to follow, and we measure their performance on a weekly basis, they usually end up falling off or spinning themselves out, or we have to end up letting them go pretty quickly because of that. So usually we try to keep them on, try to maintain their job, but we let them know, hey, we are a real business with real systems, with real processes that you have to follow and metrics that we have to measure. And so we go through that whole orientation, I guess, and then after typically 30, 60, 90 days, we know whether they're a fit or not. But yeah, I mean, we inherit a lot of bad tenants, bad property problems, and bad staff, when we go and do that. So we typically expect, we'll hope for the best, but plan for the worst kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, man, I think, typically no, though.
Okay.
Typically no. What have you guys found?
Well, we really haven't bought outside of our MSA, or in the Columbus or Cleveland MSA. So, and I guess actually Mansfield's not in Cleveland MSA. I think it's in it's kind of a sub MSA. Yeah, I think it's like maybe a 2 or 3 county now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the first couple I bought, I let the people go that were there. I mean, and and I've dealt with I thought I knew what I was doing when I was interviewing the first property management company that I ever brought on, and they did mediocre for the first year, but then it only was successful because I was there every day doing the renovations or managing the crews, and I was seeing the things like you're talking about, and was like, these guys are not. They were very insulated. They were hard to get a hold of. The tenants had, I'm like, hey, if you got a maintenance problem, call. We want to fix everything. We want to do it right. And then they would call. And they're like, we can never get a hold of anybody. Never get a hold of anybody. And they never leave the office. And so I was like, this is just not working. And so, that's really what multiple bad experiences with property management companies is why we got together. We're like, we got to, at least the stuff that's local to us, we've got to have a hand in managing. We don't want to be there on the, every day. We don't want to know the day-to-day stuff all the time. But we have somebody that's in place that's great. And then we just educate them on, like you said, like the KPIs, and then we make sure that they're following that. And then they're doing
it's the game changer to really building an organization is having KPIs in place, right? You cannot manage what you cannot measure, right? So you have to have metrics in place to measure performance. And if you don't have those in place, then they're off doing shit that doesn't matter, right? You got to make sure that they're doing the activities that keep pushing the ball down the field, kind of a thing. Where if they're doing I don't know, let's think about leasing, right? And all of a sudden they're not focused on holding open houses. Open houses is all that matters, right? Everything else falls in place if open houses occur. If open houses occur, then you have applications. If applications occur, then you have qualified applicants, right? If you have qualified applicants, you can approve tenants for move-in. If you can approve tenants for move-in, then you can start collecting more in rent. If you collect more in rent, you can hire anybody you need to. You can staff out whatever you need. You can pay for, move-in gifts and whatever else that you want to do at the property or improve. But it all rises and falls on open houses. How many people are you showing through on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? And then everything else falls into place from that. So if you're measuring other metrics that are not that metric, that is the controllable metric, right? Move-ins isn't necessarily a controllable. What's a controllable is open houses. Showings is a controllable, and then move-ins is a lagging indicator of the activity that actually is controlled. The more people you show through, the higher each one of those other numbers is, and the higher the lagging indicator will be, right? But a lot of people measure how many move-ins did you have. It's not that. It's
right.
the controllable activity. You know what I mean? So it's important, dude. And it's if you don't have those KPIs in place, if you're not reminding the staff or somebody on your team's not reminding the staff on a weekly basis of what to pay attention to, then all of a sudden they veer off and they don't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people they'll conflate activity and productivity. And you can have employees that are working really hard and staying really busy, but they're not doing the productive things that matter, which is, witnessing that, then that forces us to develop roles and responsibilities and job descriptions and checklists for people to use. That way they understand what they're supposed to be doing every day.
Yep.
Which is funny because when I got into real estate, never did I think that I'd be coming up with that kind of stuff or even thinking like that. But like you said, as we get bigger, you buy more, you have to.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing. You talked earlier about growing up in a blue collar household and a blue collar family. Seth and I came up in the fire. We grew up in the fire department. From when we were, just teenagers almost. And I think it's a hard mind shift to go from I'm the guy that has to do it to we're business owners now and we're entrepreneurs and we're investors. And it's hard to, because blue collar people take a lot of pride in work ethic and quality of work, like you said. Most people can do it 80% of what we can do. Yep. And it's good that we learn these things. That way, when we do have contractors, subcontractors, vendors, we can come in and look at things and we can go, okay, I know that's not the way that's supposed to be.
Yep.
That GFI is a 15 amp in a bathroom. It's supposed to be 20.
Yep.
And so we have some background knowledge. It's just keeping my hands off of a hammer and a wrench and a screwdriver is really hard.
Then, right? Yeah. It's too easy to then go and jump in and do the action. You have to put those handcuffs on yourself where you don't allow yourself to do that. Nope, call the maintenance guy, tell him to put that on the list. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how do you get over that mindset? How have you guys been able to be like, I'm not doing it. I'm going to put it on the team.
Well, like Seth said earlier, being accountable to each other as partners. You know, we don't always agree on everything, as partners, but we have an understanding that, listen, if I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, just, put me on blast if you need to, and just tell me, hey, is this your highest and best use of time today?
What about like?
You have to trust each other a lot to do that.
All right,
though.
I'll give you an example. I had a deal that was just kind of a hairy deal. I had a joint venture partner who shit the bed, and the lender came in, was all pissed because things weren't moving along the way that they should have been. I was just the money guy, right? And then all of a sudden I get on notice because the lender sends me a notice because that joint venture partner wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And this wasn't with my current team. It was with another project that was several years ago. And so, like, I had to go out to the property, and although I shouldn't be the one picking up trash at the property, dude, I was going around with a friggin' garbage bag, picking up trash at the property the morning that the lender was coming out to the property and walking with all of us to show by example that, listen, I'm not above doing this work. We all have to do it. Everybody go grab a garbage bag, and let's all start putting some work into picking up the trash, right? And so I think there's like leading by example kind of a thing as well, of doing the activity, not being above doing the activity, having the willingness to do the activity, but at the same time, understanding the highest and best use of your time. And dude, I think doing something like that actually leads the team. It's not picking up trash, right? It's leading the team by example, and that is one of the highest and best uses of your time that you can possibly put out there,
And I think it gets good buy-in, like from our maintenance people.
I think so.
If they have an understanding that we have an HVAC, one of our maintenance guys is an HVAC tech, which is an important person to have in our team, and just being able to talk the talk with him, I think like increases his confidence in us and us being able to lead the maintenance program and to own the business. And we're not just guys who are money guys, and we're not just some guys in another city that own the property that they trust us. And I think that is important, like you said, to not be above anything, but not always have our hands in it. And I think a place where I had mentioned earlier, where we ran out of time for things, we did a lot of things, both of us, when we were solopreneurs, that were by instinct or by like, okay, I can back of the napkin this thing. I know this is a good deal. I know we'll make money on it. I know it'll cash flow. And you don't put a lot of systems and processes in place because it's just you. You're a one-man band. But I think that changed when we started taking on other people's money, because now suddenly we have this like fiduciary obligation to people who are investors. And I think that also when you meet people, especially if you're a relational person, you meet these people and you're like, wow, these are real people, like that have real lives and real children, and this is their legacy, and this is their savings, and it's their retirement, and like we are obligated and like dedicated to that, and it's a huge responsibility.
Big time. Big time, man. And every decision that, like, when we look at decisions, we're like, how does this affect the investors, right? Is this the best move for the investors? Hey, we might be able to make more money if we put some additional dollars in, but then the project's going to drag out for 2 extra years, and annualized on their return, they're actually going to lose money, even though the project is worth more, but the cost basis, right? You know what I mean? Their annualized return is going to be less than if we just sold it today as is. So like we're always looking at those kinds of situations and making decisions in a way that we have a fiduciary duty to make sure that the investors are represented in the best way possible. And there's been multiple deals where I didn't make a dime, but I paid a pref to all the investors for 3 years, and then we sold it and broke even, or whatever. But if that's a worst case scenario for the investors, it's a pretty good worst case scenario. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You guys have kids, right?
Yeah. 2.
So how old are they?
13 and 16.
13 and 16.
Yeah, I got a 9-year-old and twins that are 7.
Right. So what are you guys doing to educate your kids? You could show them one of 2 paths, right? You can show them the path of being a business owner, right, and owning assets, or you can show them a path of the blue collar side. I think we've been talking about there's benefits to both of those, right? What are you guys doing? Are your kids interested in real estate? Are they interested in becoming a fireman, right? Like, what I found is my kids are just at the age where they're starting to talk about what they want to do when they grow up, right? They have like a career day at school in 1st grade now, and it's not it's not something that they can comprehend of owning a business and owning a bunch of property and doing all that kind of stuff, right? They can comprehend being a teacher or being a veterinarian or being a doctor or being a fireman or a policeman or whatever else. What have your kids said about what they want to do when they're going to college or out of college, or like?
I mean, yours are probably closer to that.
Yours are older. What are they saying?
Yeah, so my daughter's interested in the medical profession. My wife's a nurse practitioner, and she works in a hospital. My daughter has an interest in being a physician. So I feel that although it could be an employee position, it also could someday be a business owner position or self-employed. But I've tried to talk to my kids. The cash flow quadrant that I read a long time ago, that's a Robert Kiyosaki book. Kids can understand that if you explain that to them. You can explain. I work at the fire department and I trade time for money. And my day tomorrow, working 24 hours, is worth X amount of dollars. And I can't do any better than that because I can't make 25 hours or 26 hours in the day. And that's where my limitation is. And
even if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you are constrained the same way that anybody else is who trades their time for money, right?
So then what I've tried to do as we've bought income producing assets, as we've grown a business, is to show how you can build a team of people and that it becomes scalable. Because Firehouse is scalable to the point of one person for 24 hours. But when you explain it to your kids, we have this team of people and this is what they're doing. And our kids ask, well, what did this person do? What's that person do? They'll hear me mention people's names, and they understand that this is the property manager, and this person is the bookkeeper, and this person is the tenant coordinator, and this person is a maintenance person. If I take a phone call from them, and they say, you employ all these people, but we still make money. They're they get the concept of our family making money, and I say, yeah, and I said, what's the scale of that? I mean, how many apartments could we own if we have a team helping us and we're serving investors and we're creating a good place for people to live? How large could that grow? And even kids get that. Well, you could grow it as big as you want it. There's no limit to it.
I guess let me add to that is that my kids are younger, and they don't necessarily understand the concepts that his does, but what they do see is that the year that I really made the life choice to get, I'm going all in on real estate and whatever it takes. I worked 1,000 hours of overtime that year. So not only was I working my 24-hour on, 48-hour off, I worked 1,000 additional hours. So at the end of that year, my wife and I figured out that for 6 solid months, I was away from home, night, day, all of it. And what they've seen is their mom has been able to basically retire from being a nurse. So she's home all the time with them now, doesn't work at all. And then I'm home all the time now.
Do they correlate that though?
Yeah. We have those conversations. Yeah, that the reason why she's able to be home is because the business is doing so well. The complexes where I own the majority share in cash flow so well that it's able to get her to not have to work, that she gets to be home with you, that I'm not working overtime anymore. I'm not working and gone all the time. That we're able to just enjoy the benefits of that. They've noticed that, like a change, and they love having me home. I love being home. So that's been a huge thing for me. And so they don't necessarily understand the business side of it yet, but they understand that there's been a pretty big change the last 4 years or so.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a cool vantage point for them to see before and after, right? I'm thinking about, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking my kids, we've had a house on the ocean since my son was 2, my daughter was 4. You know what I mean? So they're just always going to grow up thinking this is normal, right? And one of the big predicaments I'm in is how do I make sure that they know it's not? You know what I mean? How do I take them around? And I want them, I love the idea of it, just exposing them and educating them and having the awareness that there's different opportunities, options, right? Not just in different jobs, but the whole philosophy of here's employees, here's self-employed, here's investors and business owners, right? Or business owners and investors. And understanding which, how to think, right? Not just what that is, but actually how to think through it themselves. And I think it's just, our job, you've seen some of these entrepreneurs whose kids end up hating that business because dad was always working, right? And always away. And they correlate you can't have a family, or you can't hang out with your family or have friends or enjoy life if you're in that business, and then they never want to go down that road, you know. And I don't want my kids to think, which I don't think they would think that. But on the opposite side, I don't want them to think that you don't have to do any work if this, if this is the case. You know what I mean? This is not, I want to do what dad does, which is nothing, right? That's not the case. And so they need to understand all those things, and I think giving them the exposure of all of it, and then letting them pursue whatever they want. Even if my kid wants to be, you know, I don't know, sell friggin' hot dogs on the side of the road, or be a bartender, or do anything that they want to do, I want them to realize they can go and do that, and they can still have financial freedom if they go and invest in real estate or businesses. They'll at least know how to do that, and then they can go and pursue ballet or becoming an American Ninja Warrior or whatever the hell else that they want to do, because they have this group of assets over here that pay for whatever else lifestyle that they want, you know, so that way they can pursue that. So, you know, it's showing them and exposing, and that's actually one of the reasons why I'm doing more stuff around here in my own backyard, dude. I just sold a storage facility in Florida that we bought for $3 million and sold it for $4.35 million in 18 months, and I've never seen it. Okay.
Awesome.
My personal take on that is about 60%. There were some fees and closing costs and everything else, but my personal take was, I don't know, 600 grand, a little more, or whatever. Never seen the property. That's cool, but then my kids don't see what we're doing, right?
Right.
Being able to take them down to the island that I bought and see the renovations that are going on the mainland house next to the island, and then driving by the 60-unit apartment building that we're building and some of the other ones that are already existing down in like Savannah and in Charleston. It's something that's a little bit more tangible, where they can be like, oh, dad owns rental property, right? He builds houses, other people live in them, they pay him money, and then, you know, there's a spread there, right, that he can make. And so I think there's definitely benefits to like doing more, having some stuff in your own backyard, and then realizing that you can, but you don't have to do that at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And so again, just exposing them to everything as much as you possibly can. And I think that's where the legacy's built, right? Just giving them the education, not giving them stuff, not giving them money, not giving them property, but in giving them education and insight and knowledge and awareness is where I'm at on the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No.
So, what does the next 24 months look like for you guys?
Oh, I mean, we're actively buying. We're shoring up or growing the team that we have, the management team, but we're actually bringing on at least one, possibly two more, like kind of like executive level people to make pass off some of the decision making that we need to get rid of to them, and just bringing on like a higher caliber of, I don't want to say a higher caliber of person, but you know what I mean, that's what they're getting brought in for specifically, is to be like meeting with us and then making the decisions, and then once they have the vision, they don't need to ask us all the time what you know, they've shown through their previous careers or whatever that they can make those decisions, and I think that's part of it. And then you know, we're trying to do
By the way, that was a game changer for me when I started hiring people who were resourceful enough and could solve problems on their own. And you got to pay for those people. Yeah. Right? But the reality is exponential growth after that. You bring those people, and then all of a sudden you bring in like mid-level managers who can also make decisions and support those executives. Dude, now it's like compounding all of that. You know, it allows you guys to really go and focus on, again, I don't mean higher level, like better than anything else, but just higher impact activities. You know what I mean?
It'll let you revisit the idea that you can't do everything too, which is like a constant thing that I see resurfacing myself. Is like, okay, I can't do this, and the idea, I think, for a long time, when you had mentioned earlier that you're going to get someone that's going to do this 80% on a maintenance task or a unit turn task, and I think that as we're looking for these executive people or people that can be part of our executive team, that I'm trying to change my mindset to stop about handing things down to people. And instead, I'm trying to look at it as, who can I hand this up to? And you know, if I was diagnosed with cancer today, I'm not going to go out and try and find someone who has almost the knowledge of cancer that I do. I'm going to go out and find an expert or someone who that's their specialty.
Love that.
And I think that the idea that we should find those same people is something that we've kind of talked this over, and you know, and we've identified a few people that, you know, we're pulling people away, you know, from a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
Because they believe in our vision, and they believe in our integrity, and they believe in our work ethic, and they want to be part of something more creative than being plugged in. You know, they're a different type of W-2 income than we are in, but they're also still in a job that's still limited to its scale.
Yeah.
So I think that, and then just, you know, kind of getting our story out there and helping to educate other people, whether they're, you know, people that want to get into real estate, people that want to get into single family to multifamily, to making that jump, but also focusing on firefighters, military, you know, nurses, whatever, like that group of people that just have never been told. I mean, there's been, for a while,
they don't even know what they don't know, right?
Yeah, I mean, and just kind of like look,
they thought it was a linear path, and there's another, you know, there's other ways to go, right?
Yeah, and it is possible, right? If the two of us can do it, you know, anybody can do it. And trying to educate them and just show them, like, here's how we got there, and kind of show them the path, or the, you know, and there's 1,000 ways. I think there's 1,000 different ways to get from point A to point B. We figured out our way, and just trying to help other people see what theirs is. Maybe it's not the same way that we went, but how can we? Because that was big for me in the beginning. Like when I talked with Jack in the beginning, you know, and seeing where he was at to how I've come. But I mean, just the few conversations we had early on before we kind of really got to know each other was, I mean, I would have a conversation with him, and then I would go back and change all the stuff that I was doing that I didn't, just from that one conversation, and helping, I guess, kind of people like get the, what do we kind of say, like get the vision. Like you said, there's something else out there. Like firemen are always like, they're always about the pension, so they're always like, you got to make it to the end of your career that thing, and it's like, that might be great, that might be what you think is the gold crown, if you will, but there's so many other things out there that you can do, and helping them kind of get to that if they want.
Love it.
Not everybody does.
No, it's not your job to make the horse drink, right? You can just, you know, share the opportunity that there's water over there. You guys want something, you want to go, you know, test it out. Like, not everybody's, you know, wants to be an entrepreneur, right? Like, it's a lot of friggin' stress. It's a lot of headache. It's a lot of responsibility that falls on your shoulders, and financial responsibility, and sleepless nights, dude. And it's not an easy thing to do, right? And so there's some people who are self-motivated that want to work with a company, though, right? And those are the type of people that you guys are attracting, that are rock star individuals and rock star intrapreneurs, right? Like they can go and problem solve, and they can figure out how to be resourceful in order to overcome obstacles, but at the same time, they don't want to go and do it on their own. Or they see the vision, they see the where we could go as a team versus any one of us going on our own. You know, and I think that's a testament to your leadership of being able to paint that vision. I think that's one of the other highest returns on our time as the visionaries of our companies. It's being able to paint that vision, you know, and telling them what's possible and where we're going, and here's where we are now, but here's where we're going to be in the next 24 months, and here's where we're going to be in the next 5 years and 10 years, and eventually I want you handling this and blah blah blah. Like, dude, my team knows that I want to give them oceanfront vacation houses for their retirement. Not a Rolex, right? Not a friggin' a watch or a pen with their name engraved on it. I'm going to give each of them a multi-million-dollar oceanfront free and clear property for their retirement, right? Like that's one of my goals, right? And that's I think that's, you know, that paints the vision. You know what I mean? Oh, I need to save up for this. No, if I just dedicate enough time to the team effort, then Tim's going to give it to me, right? Like it's kind of neat for them to conceptualize and think about that stuff. And then the other thing is like, hey, I need to save up for vacation. Or like, how about we build a business around going and investing in cool cities? And we go and travel to those cities, and we make it a tax deduction to be able to go travel to those cities and invest in those cities and see a bunch of other cool stuff while we're there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, maybe take the team with us, and we have the coaching and the education business now that does masterminds in all sorts of cool towns all around the country, and it's a vacation and it's work. So it's like, how can you develop it and feed those needs where it's not just about the monetary side of things, of paying them more, but you know, checking a lot of other boxes of fulfillment too, you know, for your team. So, well, it's exciting. I'm excited for where you guys are going. You guys have done a ton of stuff just in the past 6 years?
Yeah, since I first started like really looking into it, but I'd probably say we've had a lot of growth in the last 2 years.
Yeah, the last 2 years.
3 years.
And
Just it's amazing where you guys have come, and it's amazing about where you're going.
yeah, and I was, you know, from the time that the two of us met and decided to, you know, to form a partnership, we went from, you know, relatively small holding to where we are, and then this year now we're also doing a land development in Columbus. So we have 145, or outside of Columbus, we're doing a 145 acre mixed residential development, and so this is ground up raw land, and so
it's amazing how that snowball effect starts rolling, right?
And I think that, like you said, being a visionary in your company and being willing to lean into something like this is uncomfortable areas. I think it's really exciting. I think that's one thing that being an entrepreneur gives, is a real sense of satisfaction.
Yep.
In that area.
No, I love it. Well, I'm excited for what you guys have done. I'm excited about where you are now. I'm excited about where you're going, and excited to have you as part of the Legacy family, man. So
thank you.
Let's do some deals together. If there's anything that I can support you with, anything that I can kind of make connection, share some resources or whatever I can do on my end, don't ever hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. So
great.
You guys gonna be in Denver?
Yes.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks.
To the future. Awesome, great value, really inspiring to see what they've been able to do on a part-time basis. Being, you know, in a blue-collar profession, I can relate because my dad was a cop, and seeing him build a part-time business while having a full-time job is just, it's awesome. It's very admirable. So I love what they got going on. Hopefully you guys got some really good takeaways from that. If you did, put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what some of those takeaways were. And if you have any questions, put it in the comments below. I'm happy to answer any sort of questions, potentially do a video just to help you out and answer some of those questions. So appreciate you guys. Please share this. Please like, please subscribe to the channel. We do this to try to make a bigger impact. And the way that we can do that is by you liking and sharing and subscribing to the channel. So until next time, I'll see you on Spill the Beans.